Should be a very good race, as some people have been mentioning. It's a pretty close set of PBs to each other, and we are beginning.
Yes, so starting off into the prologue here, they are going to be hopping a lot, and the reason for that is because with each hop that they do, it saves, Madeline gets a little bit of a speed boost, so it saves around 2 frames, and throughout the prologue, it really adds up.
That's really what this run in general is about. There's just lots and lots of little time saves everywhere that really add up over the course of the entire run. Crossing the bridge now.
Yep, let's see if we can see a death or not. Thank God, okay.
Definitely not an easy start to the run if you end up dying on the bridge.
Yeah, and it can be like a little weird sometimes. Sometimes you think you're gonna make the hop, and you're trying to hop as much as possible, so sometimes you take a little bit too small of a hop and you just fall in the pit.
Yeah.
Which we've actually seen already in this tournament. Heading into Chapter 1, though, Forsaken City, where we actually get to see the wonders of the dash. And I say that as Hoettilla dashes right into the spikes.
Just a little bit too far there.
Yeah.
Good, clean progress now that we're kind of out of that first area. Doing a lot of wall bouncing.
Here you're going to be seeing a lot of wall bouncing in Chapter 1, along with a lot of hypering as well to skip a large portion of different screens. There's also these dash jumps where they dash towards the bottom right corner, but try to keep their dash before they hyper into the air, like Hoettilla just did as a reverse there.
One thing this game is great about is that in every chapter there's a lot of new kind of mechanics introduced, and each one is very distinct. Right here we're seeing these little bounce pads. When you land on them, they'll bounce the player up and give a dash back. Most concepts in general, when you land on them, they tend to give the dash back to you. You see these blocks that when you step on them, they'll crumble out from under you. So if you jump up off them or if you stand them too long, they'll actually just fall out from under you.
Yes, and as we can see here, Chocolate Cake just a little bit ahead of Hoettilla. For the most part, only like 1 or 2 screens ahead right now.
Yeah, this is still definitely very, very close. And in general, I feel like with how the first chapter goes, you tend not to see too much of a difference in times. I think it's a fairly consistent area. You might end up having a differential of maybe 5 or 10 seconds on any particular run.
Yeah, and nice spike jump by both players, by the way. Both got it first try. And Chocolate Cake leaving Chapter 1 right before Hoettilla did. Chocolate Cake did that nice neutral bouncing, or neutral wall jumping technique, while Hoettilla fell behind a little bit because he died on it trying to do it, and just went the casual strat instead.
Opted to take the natural way. So here we are in Chapter 2, and Chapter 2 is going to be introducing, again, a number of new concepts. You can see here there's a block that isn't active just yet, and at a certain point in the chapter, that's going to become active, at which point you can dash through it. And as soon as you go into it, the direction that you're dashing is going to be preserved until you come out the other side.
Yes, and oh, some unfortunate deaths here by Hoettilla. Trying to go for a skip that isn't really seem to be working that well, but taking the safety strat instead.
Yeah, being able to have a safe workaround, especially in a racing environment where things can be a little bit tricky. You know, maybe there's just some nerves, or maybe you just really want to have as consistent time as possible. So being able to have a backup strat that's a little bit safer and a little bit easier to do is always critical.
Yeah, and especially, like, I can definitely see why they would have some nerves. I mean, their PBs are fairly close to each other, so definitely seeing some nerves from both sides. We'll most likely be seeing that during Summit.
Absolutely, I imagine it's going to be very exciting. As you can see here, they're still really effectively in just about the same room. One of them is just a couple of seconds ahead of the other one, but realistically speaking, this is very, very close. This is one of the closest I've seen so far in this tournament.
Yeah. I mean, the closest I've seen so far in this tournament was a 5-second difference at the very end. So if they can beat that,
I don't think it comes much closer than that, really.
Not
just a couple
really.
of seconds, right?
Yeah, literally 5 seconds. All right, so now we forgot to mention that this is the Battle Line Chase. And the Battle Line mimics your every single movement, but is delayed by 3 seconds. So it's basically, if you've ever played Super Mario Galaxy 2 or something like that, basically the Cosmic Marios is how I like to refer to them as.
for a lot of these rooms is to make sure that if you ever have to backtrack anywhere, you're doing it in such a way that you're not running into the battlements that are coming around behind you. As we can see, both players are going to be safely leaving it. One has already left, and the other one is, there we go, just finishing that up as well.
Yeah, so we've already seen a lot of changes in the lead already pretty quickly.
And they are ending this this dream sequence here. Now the players are going to come back through this section again, though they're not going to have any of these dream blocks in the way. So it's just going to be clear maneuvering through each room.
Yeah, this is what we like to call the awake sequence, and the task systeming, like, very crazy, but I don't think we're going to see anybody of the any one of them going for it. Not really RTA viable.
Not unless they can input, what is it, one input every other frame?
Yeah, something like that. I mean, what? That's easy work. What are you talking about?
Just 15 inputs a second. Easy.
Yeah, you can't do that.
So there's one complete with Chapter 2. Moving on to Chapter 3, and the second one is, there we go, just right behind him. In fact, we're seeing, what is that, a 513 to a 514? So
Something like that, yeah.
Pretty much right on top of each other, 515. So very, very close.
Only 2 seconds apart right now. And if people are wondering, we are actually going to be timing this entire tournament using in-game time, because that's the official timing we use for leaderboard anyways. And nice little key skip there. Instead of doing the intentional way, you actually regain a dash during the screen transition. So Hoettilla used that to his advantage and was able to regain a dash just like Chocolate Cake is right now. Gain that key that way instead.
Now, one thing that's immediately apparent for people seeing this chapter for the first time is that you'll see these little dust enemies that are going on a predetermined path, and you will have to avoid them. Touching them does result in having to restart the room.
Just like pretty much every single thing in this game.
Very few safe things, yeah. The world is not
It is
very
a precision platformer, so. And you will actually see that later on there are going to be certain ones that move in a cycle, and those ones act differently from. They have a different cycle depending on if you enter the room and if you die in the room. So generally, when you're speedrunning this game, you want to know both of those cycles: the death cycle and the entering of the room cycle.
Chapter 3 can really be a very, very difficult chapter for a lot of people for that specific reason. In a lot of other chapters, you might lose some momentum when you're entering the room, but beyond, the first dash or two, things aren't really significantly different in a lot of areas. Not all of them, but in a lot. But in this particular chapter, because the timing is different, you really do have to have a very clear backup strat for many of these rooms.
Yes. So far, a very close match right now as they are going in. Hoettilla probably only has like maybe a few rooms ahead of Chocolate Cake right now, but it's still very close.
Absolutely. We're coming into the mess room, and navigating this can sometimes cause a little bit of time lost. It just depends on how smoothly you can go through it, but looks like Hoettilla is able to get through it very cleanly. Yeah,
they don't really have much room to work around during that, so getting like hypers and wall bounces off of those different books and stuff like that is very hard to do. So that was very well done for his part.
Yeah, and occasionally if you end up misaligned, you can end up, just with muscle memory trying to do dashes that normally would work, and it just kind of entangles you a little bit more, and you might have to stop and just sort of look at where you are for a second, get back on track, but no real problem.
And so now we are going to what I like to call the button phase, where you have to get 3 buttons. And going for the spike jump gets it first try. That was really good.
Fantastic. Now, there's a concept where as long as you are moving away from the spikes when you are technically touching them, you won't actually be killed by them. Using that, you can jump up just underneath them, and you are able to jump off of the block underneath because you're still moving away from the spikes. And there are a couple of situations during the run where you're able to actually use that jump to be able to gain a significant time advantage.
Yes, and I always get this question asked, why does it matter which buttons you go for first? And it actually doesn't matter at all which buttons you go for first, but we decided, because after each of these buttons that we hit, we need to talk to Oshiro yet again, the ghost man who runs this hotel, who just wants a friend, just wants us to stay for a little bit. But we had to talk to him, and he appears in different places, so we kind of routed it around, so every time that we hit a button, we end up closer to where he is each time.
Yeah, and the places that he go to, you see right when we pop out, he's right there. He appears in very set places in a set order. One of the things about this game is that there is no RNG in it. Everything is completely scripted and set, which is a significant difference from this compared to a lot of other games.
Yeah, and right there we saw Hoettilla just kind of like forgetting where to go for the next part, but then quickly realized where he needs to go. Having a little bit of trouble here with these hypers, deciding to go for the safety strat here. There we go.
And that's probably one of the biggest rooms where it's significantly different on exactly how you want to dash when you're coming in at the first time compared to a backup.
Yeah.
It can be very, very nasty coming into it and accidentally having to respawn and get it.
Yeah,
Looks
and Chocolate Cake here, very hot on his heels, only a couple of rooms behind.
And he is also through that same room. So, yep, they are really sticking very close to each other so far. And Hoettilla is just about to come out of the mess. Oh, spoke a little too soon, so very soon.
Commentator's curse, man.
They are once again in the exact same room as each other.
Oh, Hoettilla's taking some very unfortunate deaths here. And with that, Chocolate Cake passes him up. Oh, there we go, and he's out of it too now. Now they're very neck and neck.
There we go. Now, from this next section, once they get back to this door, they're going to go ahead and ascend up an elevator, and then they're going to make their way up towards the roof of the hotel, where they're going to have kind of a final chase scene with Oshiro.
Yes, and as a lot of casual players know, that the Oshiro fight is probably, for them, their least favorite part. It's definitely where, I think Chapter 3 is definitely where it starts ramping up in difficulty from Chapters 1 and 2, mainly because of the Oshiro fight, and we'll see it when we get up to it.
I agree. I feel like the first two chapters, there's a little bit more flexibility. You know, if you end up making a mistake, it's often not necessarily as critical of a one. You can kind of recover from it. But from Chapter 3 onwards, Chapter 3 for the timing and a lot of the other ones just because of how much stuff is going on.
Yeah.
Really, the precision starts ramping up and it becomes definitely a little bit more necessary.
And the chapters also do start getting longer here. Here we're going to see Chocolate Cake deciding not to go for the hypers here. The hypers in this room that he's about to go through are a little difficult. Both of them deciding not to go for it. And as you saw there, Chocolate Cake decided to actually... we take an intentional death there because you actually get to keep the key that you get in that room if you die. So we just take an intentional death and retry so that we can spawn at the beginning of the room.
Yeah, it saves a couple of seconds. Normally you would have to go up top and be able to go all the way back. There's not really any point to that since you get to take the key, so it's just a little bit easier. And Chocolate has gone on to Oshiro. As you can see here, every couple of seconds he'll appear behind you, and depending on what level you're at, he will dash across the screen towards you. If he hits you, like just about anything else in the game, you will have to restart the room.
Yes, and this is probably the part of like where I think this is like the part where very new runners will vary from like with their movements compared to like people who have run this game for quite a while now, because of like if you're just like after playing this game for the first time, and it'll be kind of interesting to see that for speedrunners they leave the screen before Oshiro even gets to attack, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, he just feels left out and left behind afterwards, doesn't he?
He just wants you to stay at the resort.
Just wants a friend.
He just wants a friend.
Meanwhile, they're both going through very, very quickly. Looks like there was a little bit of a hiccup here in this room for Chocolate, but he has successfully maneuvered through it. Again, this is a big area where the strat that you maybe come in with has to be significantly different from the backup strat based on, you know, where he's appearing. A lot of the time, players will get a feel for exactly where the dash is going to be taking place on the first entry. And when you come in the second time, you know, you don't have any of that momentum. You don't necessarily have, you know, the same placement of the other dust. And because of that, you can end up doing some very significantly different things compared to the initial entry as well as the retry strat.
Yeah, and dying on any one of these Oshiro screens, especially this last one here that they're both on, or that Chocolate Cake just left and Hoettilla is still on, definitely are very painful deaths and are very costly of time.
Yeah, as we can see, Chocolate has finished up. This is probably one of the biggest time lost rooms, I think, in the run, especially because the ending can have a couple of spots where you can just accidentally end up getting caught. and it really, there's just a number of jump points here where if the timing of Oshiro's off, if the timing of the jump is off, if you don't quite make it, just so many little things can go wrong with so little room for error, and the time can really stack up as a hiccup point.
Yeah, and we see Chocolate Cake here moving into Golden Ridge, which has a lot of new mechanics. The biggest one, of course, being the wind, which, from a casual standpoint, gets really annoying, but us speedrunners kind of learn how to deal with it and learn to cope with it as well, and use it to our advantage for maybe if they are going to attempt it, we may be able to see some auto-scroller skips.
I would love to see some of those. So as you can notice, the wind is currently blowing against the player. What that means is anytime they're moving against it, they're not going to go as far. Dashes will still go their normal speed, but beyond that, they're going to have a lot of trouble actually moving forwards. Whereas if the wind is going with you, it's going to be the exact opposite. It'll literally just push her along. So players have to really plan for that. You can see, even while pushing forward, you really have a lot of trouble actually making progress there unless you're using dashes.
Yeah, and now Hoettilla has now left Chapter 3, having a little bit of trouble with that last Oshiro room, but is finally out of it now. And now they are both into Chapter 4. There are also these turquoise-ish bubbles that you will be seeing in Chapter 4, and they basically refill your dash, and along with that, they also boost you up basically the height or the distance of a normal dash would.
Yeah.
And along with that, they also activate faster if you dash while you're inside them, which we just saw on Hoettilla's end.
Yeah, you'll notice just about as soon as the player gets in there, just as soon as Hoettilla hits it, immediately he's dashing again. Which, again, it can sit in there for just a little bit of a second, and it can definitely add up over the length of Golden Ridge because you have to go through a lot of bubbles, and if you waited for every single one to naturally dash, it would be a number of seconds that you're still actually waiting over the course of the chapter.
Yeah, and that's actually something I'm seeing Chocolate Cake not doing, so that will actually be some pretty good time save for Hoettilla, sorry, I keep mispronouncing his name. But he is deciding to not dash immediately when he gets inside the bubble, so that is a second time loss around that for each time that he doesn't do that.
And I think there can be some value in it, just to absolutely make sure, because these bubbles don't send you in a set direction. The player gives the input to determine which way they're going to be dashing, and just to make sure that you're not accidentally going off in a wrong direction, there can be a little bit of value in kind of sitting and making sure you've got everything right before letting the bubble go.
Yeah, Hoettilla doing a very well executed auto-scroll skip there that we just completely talked over. Sorry about that, but that was I just had to say that was really well executed by him. I didn't think he was actually going to go for it.
Yeah, so far this has been a very clean Golden Ridge for both players.
Yes, and we see Chocolate Cake here. He's going to be going into the final area here, the final couple screens, where the wind just goes ham for the rest of this.
Yeah, for these final couple of areas, the player almost cannot move forward without dashing. It really basically just has to be a dash to make any progress. There's going to be another new concept here. A snowball is going to be coming across the screen towards the player.
If you enjoyed Oshiro, it's basically the opposite. Like, it's Oshiro who's more thin, like more small, and comes from the opposite end and is smart enough not to show where exactly he's going to be attacking from.
Yeah, and if you had any guesses on whether you had to restart the room if it touches you, if you guessed that you do, you would be right.
Hey, just like everything in this game.
Here's some very clean movement. Ooh, a little bit of trouble with that snowball. You'll notice that these are some very thin blocks to work off of, but it's almost the perfect length to be able to dash. You can see just a jump and a dash, a jump and a dash, jump and a dash, making sure to take care of those snowballs, and Chocolate Cake is through that room.
Yeah, and Hoettilla is going to be joining him there fairly soon because he's now moving into the last couple set of screens as well. But Chocolate Cake is going to be moving on to the last screen of Chapter 4. Right here.
You can see again with the wind moving with you, the player's able to go much farther than they otherwise would.
Yeah, and right here it's shown very much right there on that last jump. Also, nice save. He almost fell down with that block. But there we go. Now he's done with Golden Ridge. Moving into Mirror Temple, where yet again, lots of new stuff gets introduced.
Yeah, the amount of mechanics introduced in each new chapter is a little bit crazy. It's really great that they managed to introduce so many and make them all meaningful throughout the course of the game.
Yeah, for sure. Almost
Hoettilla
getting
just
hit by that.
narrowly dodging it.
Yeah. Oh, what? Okay.
Look at that, just showing off just the top of the snowball. And again, like many other things, if you manage to jump on top of it, you are able to use it to get your dash back and gain a little bit of distance. So right at the very end there, climbing up that cliff, they were able to just touch the top of it and use it to bounce them up over the edge.
Yeah, and on Chocolate Cake Stream, we have these red bubbles, which go in one straight direction. And they act like the turquoise bubbles, where they will actually go faster if you dash once you're inside them.
Yeah, also like the turquoise bubble, the player is able to choose the direction of the dash, but beyond that, it will go until the player either dashes out of it or until it hits a wall.
Yes, and very, very clean Chapter 4 segment from both players, by the way. Both of them got out of there without very much problems.
Yeah, absolutely phenomenal. Chocolate has already gotten the key, moved on. We found Theo in the mirror, and now they're going to be progressing forward until they get to another room. There'll be a big long line of bubbles, and they're going to go ahead and actually skip a locked door that a casual player would normally need to find a key for by finding a bubble that's hidden inside of a block.
Yeah. Oh, having a little bit of trouble there with that dash block. So those blocks there, whenever you dash, they are on a set path, and they will actually move on the path and like move to your dash, as you just saw there on Hoettilla's screen.
Yeah. Now, as you can see here, Hoettilla is trying to do something that is definitely a staple in speedrunning here. Normally, you would have to go get a bubble, and using that bubble, you would have to bring it in through here. Actually, Hoettilla is going to showcase that right now. So normally, you would have to travel a couple rooms over here. What he was trying to do is use that pad to dash over that big long line of crystals and skip having to go get the bubble.
Yeah, and we saw earlier just then, while we were talking about that, Chocolate Cake was doing that key skip like we were talking about, did it very well. It's not something really like that hard to do, but it's something you don't even like notice on your first playthrough until you have to go to use it to get the crystal heart.
There we go. Hoettilla is bringing the key to the first door. Chocolate, meanwhile, has entered the mirror, and they're going to take control of the Seeker here for just a second, just to go through this section. And then they're going to go through a number of rooms where these Seekers are actually going to be chasing after the player.
Yeah, this is like the one time in the game that you don't play as Madeline, so cherish it.
That 15 seconds will be the most important.
So that was the introduction to the Seekers, which will actually be our enemy in this chapter. And like we mentioned, we will actually be trying to use and manipulate the Seekers to our ability, because like we mentioned with the snowballs, like we hinted towards, basically everything in this game can be stepped on by Madeline. She has like powerful feet, and even Oshiro could have been stepped on, which I don't think we saw, but everything can be stepped on to get a boost of some sort, for the most part at least.
Yeah. Now, as you can see, there's a lot of these lock switches. Chocolate has opted to actually hit both of them, but here we go. You can see that the Seeker, if it goes through that lock switch, will actually activate it for you. So there will be a lot of strategies where the player is really trying to get these Seekers to hit it on their behalf to save a little bit of time in a couple of different rooms.
Yeah, and again, it's a minor time save. It just saves in the time of having to go to that lock switch himself, but just doing that saves about like 2 seconds for some of the rooms.
Yeah, it all adds up. Just trying to squeeze every little bit of time save out as quickly and safely as possible. You see, there's another case where we're able to use the Seeker to be able to do that. Very nice, very clean.
And as a common phrase to stepping on these guys' face, sit down.
Oh, look at that. See, they're just trying to help. They're just misunderstood.
Just like Oshiro. And we stepped on his face too.
Hoettilla has also entered the mirror now. And this coming up, so he'll be entering this Seeker phase very shortly here.
And very important skip here coming up on Chocolate Cake's side. This saves around 2 to 3 minutes. It's probably the biggest skip in the entire run right here. This is Search Skip, one of the earliest skips found. but normally you would have to go get like what 3 keys or like 2 keys.
You have to do 2. You can get a third one, but as you can see by just doing a reverse dash there, you are able to completely circumvent all of that. Again, that one little dash just saved over 2 minutes.
It's very huge, and when I learned that when I first started like picking up this game, I was like, that's insane.
Oh yeah, being able to save 2+ minutes on effectively a 50-minute run or a 40-minute run, that is a crazy amount of time saved.
And Hoettilla right now flying through these lock switch sessions right now, using these seekers to his advantage. Very well done so far.
Look at that. Chocolate is probably feeling a little bit of heat coming behind him because Hoettilla is really going quick here. Now you'll notice that he stepped on one of those seekers, and even though the seeker hadn't actually hit the switch, when the seeker comes back to life, there will be a little explosion, and anything in the radius of that explosion, if a lock switch is there, it will be activated. If Madeline is in that range, she'll be pushed with a really, really great speed as well. And you might occasionally see a player using that explosion to actually gain a speed boost too.
Yeah, and here's search skip for Hoettilla. Let's see how it goes for him. And not a problem at all for either of the players.
Chocolate Cake has moved on to probably one of the more different mechanics of the run. Theo, who is sort of a secondary supporting character that the player sees from time to time, has been imprisoned in this crystal. And in order to get through each run, she'll have to carry Theo and get him from one side of the room to the other. Usually you can either leave him somewhere and hit the switches. If you throw him onto a switch, he'll hit it for you. At some point in time, the player actually has to use him to hit a lock switch. So it's a very carry escort sort of section of the game.
Yes, and I would say that this is like probably like where it really slows down, especially in this chapter.
Similar to the Shearer area in Chapter 3, you'll see a lot of variation from players depending on what kind of strats. There's one of those pushes we were talking about earlier from Chocolate Cake.
Using it to his advantage, getting pushed right through the door.
And Hoettilla is coming quick and clean. He is just a couple rooms behind, and he seems to be very intent on catching up here.
And as they're kind of showing, if you dash and you pick up Theo and then do a little hop afterwards, you can actually hold that dash speed while you're holding Theo.
Yeah, being able to cleanly maneuver with him, being able to utilize those dashes and be able to keep your speed as high as possible, because when you're carrying him, you go just a little bit slower. So you'll see a lot of people constantly throwing and dashing to maintain speed.
Yeah, and Hoettilla really making some time up here on Chocolate Cake.
Chocolate is going through. It looks like it's been a relatively clean Theo for both people. Chocolate had a little bit of a hiccup, but it's definitely still maintaining the lead. I believe Hoettilla shortened it to just a couple of rooms, though.
Yeah, which is pretty crazy because Chocolate Cake had a pretty good lead up until this point. Definitely shortening that now because of how a very clean mirror temple for Hoettilla right now.
Yeah. Speaking of clean, Chocolate Cake cleanly maneuvering through that final room, stepping right onto the Seeker, hitting the switch and going through. All they have to do is navigate through some of these pulses, which they can't hurt the player, they just slow them down, and then throw Theo into this giant eye at the end, and that is going to be the end of the chapter for Chocolate in just a couple of seconds here.
Yes, and he'll be moving on to Reflection, which in my opinion is probably the best chapter. That's just me, but
It's certainly kind of the climax of the game, isn't it? As you saw on Hoettilla's screen just a second ago, if you throw Theo down a pit, or if he somehow gets crushed or anything like that, the player does have to restart the room as well. So these bottomless pits you do have to be wary for. But Hoettilla is coming up. Hoettilla's in the final room where you can be damaged now as well. And there we go. He's just got a throw into the eye, and they are going to be, again, pretty close to each other.
Very good
close.
comeback from Hoettilla during that. Very well done.
In Reflection's already seeing a bunch of new concepts here. Reflection has this feather, which when the player touches it, they'll be able to freely control themselves flying for a little bit of time. And they're about to do lake skip here. They're giving it a try.
I'm actually surprised that they're opting to go for this in a tournament setting. Gets it, though.
Second try. How about that? Again, that concept where you can kind of jump off the edge of an area. And so being able to use a wall bounce in the water lets you keep your dash if you can do it at a proper time. By jumping out from there, they're able to just get near enough the wall that they can bounce on it without actually touching the crystals and jump up. It saves, again, just about 2 seconds doing that, but every second does matter.
Yeah, and that used to be a 1-pixel window, but they recently had a patch of this game where they actually made it a 3-pixel window.
Yeah, and those 3 pixels are really, really useful when it comes to
Really
doing
needed
this.
too.
Hoettilla's opting for the more it's a
Safety
slightly slower
strat.
but certainly safer route, yes. And again, they're really just a couple of rooms apart from each other now. This is an extremely close game so far.
Yes, and also now that we have the audio from Hoettilla's side, we can actually shout out Kevin for the wonderful voices he makes.
Yep, these are the Crush blocks, or Kevin blocks, as they've been fondly named after the person that voices them.
Yes, and I can't not, you can't not love the voice.
Oh, that little grumble fills my heart with joy.
Everybody says like, oh, the music in this game is so good. No, dude, that I want a cover of Kevin doing all the music with that voice. Like,
Chocolate is utilizing him well as he continues on. He's opting for what I believe is kind of the standard route in speedrunning. In this particular chapter, you actually have a choice of whether you want to take the top or bottom route in a number of sections. And Chocolate has so far opted the top route here. And as you can see, he's going through without really any trouble at all. It's a very, very clean section. You'll notice there's also kind of these pinball blocks that you can jump off of. And again, like everything else, hitting it will give you back your dash. This is one of the few things that cannot actually directly kill the player, no matter where you hit it from.
yes, and actually, if you hit it from one side, it'll actually bounce you in the opposite direction. And if you're holding away from it, you'll actually get a bigger bounce than you normally would.
There we go, going through very clean. And again, staying on what I would call sort of the standard path for speedrunning.
Yeah, typically this is the path that most people will go through. And now we see Hoettilla not far behind at all by any means, just falling a few rooms behind. And these rooms are very short.
Absolutely. Going through, and so far I believe they've taken the exact same route. We might see a difference here coming up. Chocolate is going through the top room, and we'll see which one Hoettilla ends up going through. And they've got just a couple more rooms to go before they're going to say hi to Granny, and then it's a nice set of rooms where they're going to be getting to battle in, and then there is the battle and fight.
Yes, and I feel like the battle line fight is where we might see like a change of pace for the runners, just because the battle line fights, which you'll see when we get to it, it's really movement intensive. It's all about your movements and how fast you can hit her.
Yeah, she's going to be periodically firing lasers or firing energy balls at the player that they will have to dodge out of the way. So a lot of the movement is going to be structured around moving forward while dodging the attacks at the same time. So you'll see the players, hopefully, if they go fast enough, you can often actually dodge, or you can hit her before she even gets off a single attack, which will move her to another place in the room and reset her. Sometimes, if there's a little bit more of a safe strat going, or it's a little bit slower, you might see them have to, suddenly dodge out of the way, or they might incorporate into the movement where they're already going to be at a different place when she's firing at them.
Yeah, that's, and the fact that it's really cool because this entire boss fight, you don't even have to do anything to hit her. You don't even have to dash into her in order to get a hit on battle line. All you need to do is touch her, and that's it.
It is probably the most gentle boss fight I've ever seen.
Yeah, but I honestly think it's one of the best ones in a game, that, at least from my experience. I think it's a really cool boss fight.
Oh yeah, definitely. Chocolate Cake is ascending down, and Hoettilla is trying to take the shortcut here. You can see you can align on that block there to
taking
be able
the
to
safety
slide through the second set of crystal.
for this one, just so he doesn't die. Because if you die without, there's no checkpoints at that point, so he would go to the very top again.
Now, interestingly enough, if you opt to not take the second set of crystals, the one that he dashed to the wall to be able to touch, you can step onto a section of grass that does function as a checkpoint for the third section, despite it still being in the same room.
Yes. And usually during a tournament setting, we've seen a couple of the players do that during this tournament, just as a safety setting.
Chocolate is already in the middle of the battle line fight, and Hoettilla is just starting his.
Again, only like 3 rooms of a difference right now.
Yeah, and again, you can see here, this kind of laser beam is focusing in on Madeline. And if the player does not move out of the way for it when it finishes charging, it will kill them and they will have to restart the room. There you can see there's the jump to avoid it, but the pulse ball followed up behind it does manage to get him, unfortunately.
Also, I would like to ask for chat to spam some great heyas for this awesome soundtrack.
Now, again, while some of the rooms only have the laser, some only have the balls, and some have a mix, it's not random. Everything in this is completely 100% scripted.
Yes, and the more you run this game, the more you realize like how you can really manipulate this. altogether.
Yeah, being able to find the best way to hit her as quick as possible while being able to dodge the shots is definitely key to this section. And again, so far, both players doing very, very well there. Again, just within a couple of rooms, Hoettilla is coming through very, very clean on these sections. He's been doing very, very well in the more fast-paced areas.
Yes, and fairly soon we'll be seeing that the fight is going to be ramping up very quickly, because in the second phase, well, as I like to call it, Battleline has pretty much a temper tantrum where she starts throwing blocks at you. And that's where you'll be seeing a lot of speed increasing.
Here we go again, just kind of dodging in and out of these lasers. Chocolate having just a little bit of trouble, and that can be a really tough room section, because with the pinball block, it makes it very, very difficult to exactly figure out where you're going to be, and if the timing doesn't work out quite, you can kind of be powerless to stop jumping up right into a laser.
Yeah, we see Choco taking some of these rooms a little safe, which is probably better so that he just doesn't take an unfortunate death here.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the biggest issues in running this particular section is that a lot of the most difficult sections of the room are right at the end, so instead of being able to get some quick deaths right at the beginning, you'll get, 5, even 10 seconds into a room before having to repeat it, and that can be some major time loss during a run.
Yes, exactly. And we see now that some of that time loss from Chocolate actually made it pretty easy for Hoettilla to catch up, only one room behind now. Or sorry, 2 rooms.
There was a small little interlude there from Cake, and he is again moving along. Cake has just a couple of rooms, I think about 4 rooms left before, before getting
he's now into the second phase I was talking about, where these blocks are going to be rising and falling from Battleline.
And here's Hoettilla coming through. Very nice getting through that first section. If you go too slow, those blocks will crush you. So being able to jump through all of them at the very beginning makes it a much easier room to deal with.
That's a time where, like, you really don't want to take a death there, because then it's like sometimes it's really hard to remember what you need to do after taking a death.
Yeah, and you actually start a little bit farther back in that room if you do take the death, which makes it a lot harder to properly get the jump off to be able to get through all of them.
Yes.
It's one of the areas where not only is the strategy a little different, but also significantly harder if you take the death.
Yeah, so for the most part, you just want to get a really quick hyper off there in that first room.
And they are, for the time being, in the same room. Chocolate has just left and is in the very last room here, where there's going to be a number of lasers that he has to dodge, and so far he's dodging all of them fantastically. A little bit of a hiccup there.
And that's enough for it to get very close right now, both in the same room, the last part of the fight. The last room of the fight, actually. Taking a little bit safe there, taking that wall instead.
Yeah, and that wall really did save him. Had he tried to go up and take the fast route, that laser would have absolutely caught him. So being able to read that situation there and just go for the wall instead saved him and kept him going.
Yes, and we see Hoettilla also right on his heels right now, about to deliver the final hit, while Chocolate Cake just got the power up, and now he can dash twice, which is going to be moving him into the final chapter of this game, which is Summit.
Yeah. Now, from a thematic standpoint, what happens at the beginning of Chapter 6 is that Battleline throws the player down to the very base of the mountain. So what you're going to see in the Summit is going through every section, going through little snippets of them with this double dash, as they ascend back through every section of the mountain before ultimately taking on the very top of it.
Yeah, and I'd say, like, Chapter 6 is basically where the whole problem of this story gets resolved, and then Chapter 7 is just like, okay, go climb the mountain now, like, you've done everything.
Yeah, this is resolution, and Chapter 7 is triumph. And here we see the very beginning of it. You'll see it starts off with kind of a lot of the reflections, sort of background, a lot of the crystals, a lot of those same concepts. And then we'll move into, the city, and then we'll move into the dream area, then we'll move into the hotel, and you'll just see a lot of those mechanics and concepts revisited through each of it while they go. It can be a very tight and very technically demanding chapter, so we're probably going to see some variance in strats, and it should be very exciting.
Yes, and just another quick reminder that even though one player finishes before the other at the end of this chapter, it does not mean that they have won, because as you can see at the bottom of both the screens, their timers are a little bit varied because of loading differences and maybe differences in their PCs, because I'm pretty sure both of them are playing on PC. So because of that, just because one person finishes first does not mean they win. It all depends on the in-game timer at the end.
Yeah. Chocolate moving through the first section, he's going to be going into the city. Hoettilla doing a great job there in that last room, being able to use the dash to skip a couple of crystals. A lot of this is going to be using your dashes, going to be using a lot of this tech that you get from speedrunning to be able to skip as much of it as possible. So you'll see here, you know, being able to just get through as quick and as clean as possible while trying to skip as much of, you know, the way the level's intended. Like right here, we see Chocolate skipping one of those crystals by just going straight through.
And yes, so this is the 500 meter. There's going to be a section that kind of resembles each chapter, like Rack was talking about. And this one is definitely styled after Forsaken City. So we get to see the zippers again, we get to see the ice cubes a little bit. And yeah, so now Chocolate Cake is moving out of the section, and we get to see the return of the dream blocks in this next upcoming 1,000 meter section.
Yep, and there we go, getting a nice little boost from Battleline now that they are the best of friends.
By their powers combined.
There we go.
So
we see
taking some unfortunate deaths there on Hoettilla's end.
Yeah, here in the 1,000 meters again, we'll see these dream blocks, and that's going to be kind of this central theme: dream blocks and lock switches. And again, being able to use those dashes, you'll notice that when you come out of a dream block, no matter how many dashes you would have had left, you do get both of them back, not just one.
Yeah, and you can actually jump out of dream blocks, which they don't normally teach you until you do B-sides. And along with that, you can also hyper out of them, but you only have about a frame to do so. So if you don't get it, it's not like the biggest deal. Alright, so an unfortunate death there by Chocolate Cake, making it seem, giving Hoettilla quite a bigger chance to catch up right now.
And he is definitely trying to do so. Going through these rooms very, very smooth, hitting all the lock switches there. First attempt, no need to restart. And a lot of these are going to be some very big dream block sequences where you travel across a large stretch of room going dream block to dream block.
Yes, for sure. And right here, there is an optional route. This is not the normal route you would take in your casual playthrough that Hoettilla is on. It's just a tad faster than going the casual way.
There we go. And as you'll notice, it's just, as soon as they come out of the dream block, it's just a dash. It's just constant dashing, generally throughout most of the summit, but especially in the dream block section.
Yeah, and right here, we have Chocolate Cake moving into the 1,500 meter. This is literally cycle heaven. There's cycles everywhere that you have to make in this one. Specifically, like this room right here, it's all cycles.
And these
that
can
you
be
have to
some
memorize.
These can be some very long rooms too. So again, a death in here, not only does it tend to kind of change up what your strategy is for the initial part of it, but it can be huge time loss if you end up taking a death right at the end of it.
Yeah, and we're gonna see if they try to do the ultra room here. They seem to be going for it the casual way, which is completely understandable. Oh, taking a death there, though. Giving Hoettilla more room to catch up, who's having a fairly good summit so far. I had to say it. I'm sorry.
I think it's still been a good summit, even with a little bit of a curse placed upon him. Going through very smooth. A couple of hiccups here and there, but it can be very hard to play any of these levels perfect. There's so much going on, there's so much technical precision necessary, that even with a couple of hiccups, if it's right in the middle of the room, or if it's, you know, right at the beginning of the room, it's not necessarily a huge amount of time loss. You can definitely come back from it without too much issue.
Yeah, and even in Chapter 7 alone in Summits, you always have like that current thought of like, what's coming up next? What's the next room that I need to remember how to do? Specifically.
Yeah, it's a really big mental juggle. You have to be looking at the, you know, the dust on the screen. You've got to kind of keep the cycle in mind. You've got to be checking your dashes. You've got to be thinking exactly how to exit the room. It's not nearly as simple as, you know, just dash done.
Yeah, pretty much.
Speaking of done, Chocolate is done with Chapter 3, moving into the Golden Ridge chapter, the 2,000 meter section of Summit.
Yeah, and if I am correct, this could be a fairly good paced run for Chocolate right now. Not sure this will be a PB paced run, but I'm pretty sure he has a 48, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, both of them, again, they do have very tight times. I think both players might be in PB territory. Chocolate, definitely. I think Hoettilla even is still in a PB set, too. So it's definitely been a very good run for both of them, regardless.
Yes, of course. And it's also been a extremely tight race, even with the mess-ups given from the others, giving them more of a chance to catch up.
It really has. Hoettilla here coming through this final section, playing it very aggressively. Look at him just edging under that dust there.
Getting a little friendly there with that dust bunny, not gonna lie.
Chocolate is riding that directional block the whole way. You can actually skip a lot of this section, a lot of this auto-scroller, by being able to jump off of the directional block in a certain way right as it's going through that narrow gap. But opting through the safe route, you can never really fault someone for taking the safe way.
Yes, and as we've seen from both of the players, they decided to go the strawberry route. Again, it's just a little bit faster than taking the route you normally would in a casual playthrough.
Plus, you get a free strawberry out of it.
Yeah, except they skipped the strawberry, both of them.
All right, going along through again, you can see that that ever-present wind is causing a lot of trouble moving forward, and you'll see for that reason that dashing and being able to figure out exactly where to dash, especially with these snowballs coming, look at that, can be absolutely critical. Smashing right off the top of that. That was very close.
And right now, Chocolatecake having a little bit of trouble with this room right here. Giving her to a little bit of catch-up room right here because he's been making up as much time as he can. He's going for the skip right here, gets it, saves a little bit of time over Chocolatecake.
Just a little bit. Yeah, you can see, based on how that's structured, if the player does a wall bounce right at the edge there, it'll kind of scoot them around it and give them enough height that they can make it up over, and you can just avoid using the directional block there for that last little bit.
Yeah, and right now, Hoettilla really made up a lot of time in this chapter. It's but alone, literally only like 2 or 3 rooms behind right now.
Yep, kind of the mantra of this run. It's very, very close. Chocolatecake is in the temple section, the 2500 section of the summit. Hoettilla's entered the last room of the 2000 section, so it is still definitely anybody's game. Absolutely. Chocolate's going very clean through this. He had just a little bit of a hiccup there, but I feel like every single time.
Yeah,
So far it's
all
been
the time
very
for me.
good. It's been very, very smooth, and he is going to try and skip, having to take the long way for this key here.
Gets it first try. Very well done.
Again, similar to the lake skip, there's a little bit of an edge there that the player can jump off of, and by bouncing off of the one wall, it puts you in just the perfect position to be able to jump off of the second one.
Yeah, Hoettilla again hot on his heels, only like 2 rooms behind him. And now I'm pretty sure what I and a lot of people are wondering, who's gonna risk it and go for door skip?
Oh dear. It will certainly save time if a player can do it. If a player can
it'll save a whole second. Oh, tried to go for it.
It's opted for it. He's trying it again. Now one thing, he is gonna go ahead and take the switch, and again, you really can't fault
he's going for the second one though, and he gets it.
The mini skip.
Saving half a second.
One thing I really like about door skip in particular is that if you look at the background and you look at kind of the cobblestone compared to the where you can see through in the background, there are 2 spots that perfectly align with where you need to dash in the door, and it kind of makes this really nice, consistent way that you can get through without really having to eyeball it too much.
Yeah, and unfortunately he didn't get the first one, but he took a safety strat for it, but he did get the second one, which was very surprising to see that he would still go for the second one, even after going for the safety strat for the first one.
Hoettilla has just successfully gotten the key, rather than having to go the long way around.
Yeah, having a little bit of a struggle with that one there.
Now we see Chocolatecake has entered this final section. You're going to see some very, very large rooms. There's going to be almost no screen transitions except in a couple of different areas. Instead, you're going to see these 30 flags that count you down to the summit, and each flag that you touch is going to function as a checkpoint for the player.
Yes, and I like to sort of split these up into 3 different sections of 3,000 meters. There is this section, which is the downward wind section. Then there's going to be an upward wind section, and then there's going to be a no wind section.
Yeah, for those of you that remember the wind from Golden Ridge, this functions essentially the same, except instead of pushing the player left or right, they're going to either be pushing the player down or bolstering the player up.
Yeah, and specifically when it boosts them up, you'll be seeing them having a lot more height from their dashes and just jumps in general.
Yeah, meanwhile here you can see that it pushes them down extremely quickly. They really, really drop fast when the downwind section is going on. It can be very, very difficult to move up walls with that in mind.
And yeah, as we see here, Hoettilla joining up in 3,000 meter right now. Just a couple checkpoints behind. Anything can happen.
There we go, just touching them one at a time, and Chocolate has entered the upwind section, so as you can see, much more buoyant. The player just kind of floats forever in this section compared to the normal.
Yes, and I say the upwind section has some of the more unforgiving checkpoints. Specifically, I think 13 is one of the most choke-worthy ones.
13 is a run ender. It's going to be a lock switch where the player has to hit a couple of those to get the block to move out of the way, and then go through what looks like a big gap, but I promise that when you're trying to do it, it is not that big.
Not at all. And he's going for it right now. We'll see if he gets it. Again, this is probably my least favorite checkpoint of the entire thing, and what I end up losing a lot of runs to. This gap right
first
here.
Try.
Yeah, it looks, when you see them do it like that, it seems so easy, but trust me, when you're doing it in a run, it just never seems like it's big enough.
Especially when, if you have managed to hit all of those lock switches and you're trying to go through it, if you end up missing, it can be, 30 seconds of time loss or so.
Something like that, yeah.
It can be awful.
It's painful to see that happen. But Chocolate Cake going pretty well throughout this entire every time.
Hoettilla, meanwhile, is going into the upwind section, so they are on the same section of the area. He's on flag 19, so that's about a 10 flag difference between the two.
Still, a 10 flag difference only seems to be around, or happens to be around, close to maybe 2-ish minutes, and between these players, considering the very sad key skip that happened and like how much struggle Hoettilla had with it, still very close right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And here we're going to be getting into just about the final section for Chocolate. He's got to go through this one other flag, and after that he's going to be in the no-win section.
Yeah, and unfortunately we can't say that it doesn't, just because Chocolate finishes first doesn't mean he wins. It actually does mean that he wins, because as you see on the bottom of the screen, his timer is a little bit behind Hoettilla's, so no matter what, if he finishes first, then that declares him his win.
Yeah, Hoettilla is going to need to finish first, and by about a margin of 30 seconds or so.
Yes, and right now he's on number 10, so still trying his hardest to catch back up, but doesn't seem like there's much catch-up time left, as Chocolate Cake is on the second last flag here.
Things are looking a little bit grim, I have to say. Chocolate just has this one to go, and now that he's through this one is a relatively relaxing last flag. There's really not much by way of spikes. Yes, there's a couple crystals here and there.
It's kind of just a sense of that you did it, and like you're at the end.
It's very much a sense of achievement, and there we go. Chocolate has finished.
48-45? I do not know if that's a PB.
That is a PB for either player. I believe one was a 49 and one was a 51.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
that
perfect.
is going to be one for them.
Well, congratulations.
Chocolate Cake.
And it seems like if Hoettilla has a very continues his pace that he's on right now, he very well could PB as well. Because I'm pretty sure that he is the one with the 51 time.
Yes, that is correct. I would love to see a PB for both players.
A double
here.
PB would be great. Unfortunate there.
It's going to be a close one. You can still definitely do these last few flags in a minute and a half, but it's going to have to be very, very clean here.
Yes, and, well, I guess we can just wait and see. And Chocolate's going to go ahead and show off his pie to us.
There we go. Made it to flag 2. Just a little bit to go. He's got to maneuver around this this one area with these crystals and then climb up through the set. Hello there.
So, was that a PB?
Yeah, I think so. What did I get? Like a 40...
48, 45.
9, like 20 or something.
Oh, nice. So,
I believe that is a PB for Hoettilla as well.
Yeah, that's a double PB right there.
Nice. GG
50-37. That was only like less than 2 minutes apart for you two. Very close race.
That was a good one.
Yes, indeed. Let's see if we can get Hoettilla in here as well for a quick interview on both of you guys' runs. Oh, there he is.
Welcome back.
GG.
GG indeed. That was a PB if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes, it was.
That's the double PB, everybody. both of you PB'd your runs, so congratulations on both of your successful runs there.
Yeah, fantastic running to the both of you. How are you guys feeling when you entered the summit? Were you guys both nervous? Were you pretty excited?
I wasn't really looking at the time. I was just focused on the race.
Yeah, fair enough. There's been a lot of PBs in this tournament already, and it's very rare to see a double PB in a race. Hoettilla, do you have any like nerves getting like near the end, knowing that? Did you know that you were on PB pace?
Not really. I thought I was behind because I had a really bad Oshiro, and
Oh,
was-
me too.
like that was not very good. And so when I went into Summit, I was not thinking about getting a PB, but it turned out pretty good. Didn't die too
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. The first like couple sections, we were really impressed with your summit. You were really making up a lot of time on Chocolate Cake, and at one point you were only like 2 screens behind him, which was really cool to see. At one point you guys were like pretty synced up at one point, which was pretty funny. So very close race between you guys. And any last remarks about your runs?
Not really.
Kind of
No.
wanted to share an anecdote. So I was gonna ignore door skip because it was a race, but
Oh yeah.
because I died, or I figured I'd give it one try, and then I died, and I was like, all right, I'm not gonna do door skip, and then I forgot that you actually have to hit the second switch, so I ended up doing like half of door skip.
Oh, that's what happened, because I noticed that you hit the first switch, and I was like, why is he going for second half with door skip?
Just the mini skip.
It's the
It saves half the time
save,
that
right?
a regular door skip does.
It's a nice half-second time save. Like, take it. All right. So thank you all for watching. Thank you guys for the incredible race just now. Make sure to follow them, the racers, as well as us, the commentators, if you enjoyed our commentary and their gameplay. And
Phenomenal runs, guys. Great job to the both of you. Congratulations again on your PBs.
Thank you.
And I think that the next race is actually with Hoettilla and Swessy at in 3 hours from now.
Yep.
At Speed Gaming 3. So if you want to see that, stay tuned for that. And yeah, again, great race, you guys. Congratulations both to you on the new PBs. And we will see you all next time.
Yeah,
Take
thank you
care,
for
everybody.
commentating.
Yeah, no problem.
See ya.